Jordan and Gretzky, Serena and Ruth. Remembering great ones is easy to do. But what about the no-names who spent their whole lives long snapping footballs and catching sack flies? They're guys, remember that guy. Remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy. They're just gonna remember some guys now.
Pushing the postseason back and now officially into November as Derek Jeter bats with 2 outs and nobody on. Remember that guy, the show where we mine our memories for nuggets of nostalgia about peripheral players past and present. Hey there, folks. It's me, one of your hosts, James. We got no one on base for Jeter, but maybe someone a little off base with me today?
No, it's fine. Just put Byung-Hyun Kim on every team the Yankees are facing and we'll be totally fine.
The new Mr. November is whoever's going against Byung-Hyun Kim. But I'm not Byung-Hyun Kim. I am Diaz. You might have just heard from a very special guest. He has a familiar voice, but it's actually a new twist on a character you love. Please introduce yourself.
It's Byung-Hyun Kim.
It's Byung-Hyun Kim. I already said it.
Byung-Hyun Perez.
For today, I'm Byung-Hyun Kim.
Xavier Kim flows a little easier, but Byung-Hyun Perez, I think, is worth it.
Because that would be 2 different surnames, would it not?
Yeah, because I guess Kim
Kim
would be.
Kim is the surname.
Kim is the surname.
Well, yeah.
So it's Kim Byung-Hyun or Perez Byung-Hyun. We've reached the apotheosis of this drawn out joke. Perez Byung-Hyun. What's making memories for you right now?
Couple things. One, John Davidson is back. He's doing some fill-in dates as a broadcaster for Columbus because they just needed someone to, take over for a couple days.
So I'm sorry, is someone that was previously retired, they've been just like out of nowhere after being inducted, called back into action? This is interesting. This is interesting timing.
This is why the Builders category is so great. Because Builders, they're always there. They never truly go away. We have our lifers. It's fascinating to think that they're like, oh, someone had a conflict on the schedule because they moved a game for Amazon's Monday night coverage. And they're like, hey, JD, can you just come in the booth and call this game for us? And he's like, yeah, why the hell not? And I love the idea of just being like, I'll step in and call a national broadcast out of nowhere just for fun because they asked me to. And I aspire to that level of, yeah, I don't give a fuck. I'll just do it because I know that I can do it well. So love JD. Love that he just got to randomly call a nationally broadcast game because of scheduling issues. Other than that, not a whole lot that I'm thinking about. Other than Cat was great last night. 44 points, 12 boards. Looks like they finally have some sort of rhythm between him and Brunson. Very excited for the Knicks season and the Rangers season. It is now finally, winter sports season. So excited about that.
You've got double vision at MSG all over again.
Can't wait. We need to cleanse MSG, so
God, yeah. I know that it's a different building, but it is weird that we have 2 nickels for Nazi rallies held at MSG.
I mean, it is the biggest venue, or the most important venue in the biggest city in America. I'm honestly surprised it's not more than that.
Especially with a dumb fuck like James Dolan, who may not be a Nazi himself, but certainly would be in the same room as one.
But it is really funny that Dolan did still take Kamala's money to advertise on the Sphere, which again he also owns. Mm-hmm. So in his 2 biggest
James Dolan is just motivated by money and nothing else.
So in his 2 biggest buildings, we have a massive rally for one side, and a giant face of the other person in the other, projected to all of Las Vegas. So
I have exactly one question about the World Series that we don't need to talk about anymore. Do you think those fans that stole the ball out of Mookie Betts' glove were also at the MSG rally?
I mean, probably. I'm not.
Do you think they stayed at the same rental just the whole time in between, just coming down to Connecticut, staying in New York the whole way through?
Those guys were New Yorkers.
He's Connecticut.
Were they Connecticut?
Yeah.
I thought the guy was.
Which is honestly the
perfect
kind of Yankees fan to be some fucking asshole trying to grab a ball out of a player's hand.
They feel like some real, once Giuliani left the city and went to shit, I got out.
But that's it. Nothing more on that topic. Diaz, you got any topics for us?
I'm glad Xavier's, super influential big man has played well and has played for his team. I'm very happy for him about that. No real memories being made because I'm kind of just blacking out for all of the Sixers games that happen until we actually get, the two fucking guys that we want to watch on this team. And Tyrese Maxey's cool. I still like Tyrese Maxey. But I instead want to talk about something that I learned recently that did happen a long time ago, but I only learned it actually earlier today. Did you guys know that Avril Lavigne was once a hockey star?
Surprised she's Canadian.
I knew she played hockey. I do not know more about it, and I'm very excited to hear more about truly the first love of my life. I'm happy to say that here on air.
That's a perfect one, honestly.
Yeah.
Right up.
Surprising no one who knows me.
Right. No, it's ditto. But, so when she was obviously, grew up on ice skates, all that, pond hockey with the family, stuff like that. But when she was 10, she finally convinced her parents to let her sign up for, an actual team. And the only team in town was a boys team. So she just played with the boys and was the MVP both of her first 2 years as Pee Wee, playing with the boys before she started playing with the girls. Won all kinds of tournaments and championships playing with the girls until she was 16. And then she signed with the record label, and that was it. But if we want to look holistically and, selfishly as Americans, this great run that we've seen from U.S. women's ice hockey may have never happened if Avril Lavigne never gets signed. So, shout out the recording companies. They've only ever done good ethical things. And one of those is making sure that the U.S. is still on top, because Avril Lavigne absolutely would have dominated us if she was allowed to continue.
Thank goodness that every recording contract with a teenager has gone as well as that one has.
All of them flawless. But no, I learned that recently, and I thought that was cool. I would talk about the Flyers, but they suck too. So it's
you have really a very large goalie. We've talked about very large goalies recently, and you do now have the biggest one ever.
We do have a very large goalie. He is also very bad. It's an incredible combination. Eagles are like 5-2, but it's so funny because it's like when the Eagles are 5-2, they should be 6-1, and when they're 6-1, they should be undefeated. And when they're undefeated, the special teams are a real concern, and we need to make sure that we get that tightened up, or else we're definitely not going to win in the playoffs. I truly Xavier can maybe understand it a little bit, but he probably doesn't follow like WIP and like staying in touch with the Philadelphia fan culture. But like, even with these two dominant wins that we've had back to back, it's still, well, they trailed the Browns in the fourth quarter, and they shouldn't have lost that Falcons game. Like, we'll be at the parade, and we'll still be debating if Jalen Hurts is going to be the starter in 2 years. Like,
my online sports diet on the feed, anytime the Eagles game is going on, the worse they feel, the better you guys are probably doing.
Yeah, like somebody's like tweeting or skying or what do they skeet? They skeet on Sky?
Skeeting. I commit to the skeet.
Just skeeting out there that their face is melting off and they can't stand it, and we got to get rid of Sirianni, which I will say, I was 2 weeks ago in that contingent. Now I'm in okay, I guess we got to just play it out. But it is amazing. Like, even the Super Bowl year was the one year that people weren't negative about the Eagles in this city. Every other year. And that was how you knew it was special. Like week 3, and nobody was saying, everybody was saying it's awesome that Jake Elliott hit that kick, not why the fuck did it come down to a 62-yard field goal to beat the Giants. That was really when the vibe shifted. But it was just that year. But it's always sunny in Philadelphia, isn't it?
It is. And, that I don't want to denigrate that by saying that's a hackney phrase, but it's a bit of a cliche, and that ties into something that I would actually love to talk about today. To start off, what does the Associated Press mean to the two of you?
I always
the style guide.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the AP style guide. And when I would read, we had the News Journal, the Delaware News Journal, or the Wilmington News Journal, whatever the fuck it's actually. But we would get all of the Delaware football coverage, but all of the more national articles in the sports didn't have a byline. It was always just AP. So I just took the AP as
Exactly.
like, we're just stating what it is, and that's all that we're doing. We're not doing anything else.
Okay, so I'm glad that you are very, very close for kind of how they function. To give a little bit of background on the Associated Press, and we'll get to their style guide in a moment. AP is formed in 1846. There's 5 New York daily newspapers. This does not include the New York Times initially, because there was just a shitload of newspapers in New York. And 5 of them in particular, in order to better cover the Mexican-American War, basically pool their resources and pool all the foreign and like far out of state correspondence that they have. And they all generate coverage from their like collective reporters. At first, they're just using it amongst themselves, but eventually this then becomes basically a place you can license news from. So like this is a transactional thing wherein like AP reports, because they have just this massive army of correspondences continue to grow and grow in the subsequent 150 years, they are able to have very wide-ranging coverage that papers like a local Delaware newspaper are not going to be able to match up to necessarily. They don't have the resources to send all that out. So it is a way for people to get that news. And so it drives news coverage a big way in that way. But also, as Xavier brought up, they have had a style book that has been publicly available since 1953, though they, had a style guide prior to that. They are very, very influential in their ability to put out the style book that helps dictate how people should talk about news in general. And, there's a lot of reasons right now that the influence of higher up news organizations on the local media diets is important for other reasons, but like specifically in sports, because the AP did latch onto sports coverage very early on as something they could drive. Like, it was great that you pulled that one out, Diaz, because that is a lot of after the Mexican-American War and then after the other wars that happened in the 19th and 20th century. It is a big driver of their business because they can have someone at every game. With that, though, I think they have a certain responsibility, and I think they abdicated that recently with their style book. They put out a tweet, unfortunately. This one is still on Twitter. It's X, the Everything website. And on October 25th, 2024, the AP tweeted this out. A team losing a game is not a disaster. Home runs are homers, not dingers, jacks, or bombs. A player scored 10 straight points, not 10 unanswered points. If a football team scores 2 touchdowns and the opponent doesn't come back, say it never trailed rather than never looked back. In short, avoid hackneyed words and phrases, redundancies, and exaggerations. And I really do think this is sincerely like an abdication of their responsibility. And like, yes, very quickly people were just pointing out the hypocrisy that like they have used all of these phrases many times before. There's numerous examples you can pull up. And I know that because I've been doing a lot more research for general writings that we as a group have been doing and seeing like all of these pieces, and they are the historical sources that we have for this. And there is the quote attributed to either Phil Graham or Alan Farth, both of the Washington Post. Journalism is the first rough draft of history. I think it is very disingenuous for us to talk about sports in the, like, as dumb as they are very important. And it is stuff that people look back on. And I think the kind of like bland, sanitized language that the AP is pushing in that misguided tweet, as far as I see it, is robbing us of like what emotions were genuinely stirred by the things that were happening to the people that were experiencing in that moment. And I think it gives a less full account of what will someday be history. So I just wanted to call to attention the fact that I disagree with the Associated Press on this. And now hopefully you know a little bit more about that.
Fuck them saying only use these words. What about those words? Those words are important too.
You really want me to not say like dongs? I can't say dongs anymore when I'm talking about baseball. Like, why would you ever want to take that away?
If a player hits a home run and that player then chugs an alcoholic beverage through a tube, is that not a dong bong?
It is a
That's exactly what it is.
There are different kinds of home runs. Like, to say that all of that is just a home run or a homer, like, there are wall scrapers, there are laser beams, moonshots. It is not a one size fits all. None of these instances, I think, are like, there are genuine differences in language. And I have always, like, I probably sound like an asshole a lot of the time because I try to use very big words. Like I genuinely, I know that I have a good vocabulary and I do like to flex it a little bit because we have these things to mean specific things. These words mean specific things. And when that comes up, you should use them because language is a beautiful thing used to communicate with one another. Anyway, as we continue communicating things to all of you, we move on to our main segment today. Xavier, I'm going to go ahead and put you on the spot since you got the first pick. Why don't you go ahead and refresh everyone's memory on Reliti-Guy-tion?
Yeah, Reliti-Guy-tion is where we fix all of our fuck-ups. So,
sure.
And also where we bring in the politics of this. We can only bring in one person every week. But sometimes to earn someone's vote, you gotta, maybe make some deals under the table, make some promises to get that vote in exchange for bringing someone in later on. And I have made some promises here. So, James, I'm going to kick this off by bringing in a guy who was not good at only one thing, but as our good friend of the show, Cantor, pointed out, was good at two things, and still playing in Mexico. Billy Hamilton may not have fit the category because he, as I'm looking here right now, was a top 5 fielder 3 different years, along with the number 1 base runner in the league 3 different years. Maybe the Yankees could have used that. We like fundamentals. That could have been very helpful to have someone who knows how to run a base and catch a ball.
You all would have fucking hated Billy Hamilton. Billy Hamilton would have gotten actually murdered by booze. Like, let's get real for 1 second about the Bronx. Billy Hamilton would have died there.
Either way, Billy Hamilton was not only good at one thing, and was still active to a point, so that was enough for me to not vote for him during his previous episode, but it is enough for me to think that he deserves a spot in the Reliti-Guy-tion Hall, because I do appreciate the fundamentals, even if you can't hit for shit. I like the fact that you're able to make runs on the base path. I mean, his fucking 2016 season, second place for base running runs above average for Fangraphs was Mookie Betts with 8.9 runs made on the base paths. Billy Hamilton was 13.9. So the difference between him and Mookie Betts in second is the same as the difference between Mookie Betts and Jackie Bradley Jr. in 24th. And he did it more than one time. So I do appreciate that. I appreciate the fielding. Center field is not an easy position, as many people know. It is the hardest outfield position, unless you're playing like in Fenway, where left field is extremely difficult. But he was really good at that. And I like guys who go and play in Mexico, because that is a fun way to keep your career going in a low-stress environment where if you look at whoever is playing the Mexican League at any one time, it is a who's who of guys. And it's just very fun because baseball, it's a commitment to play baseball. You do not get many off days. You have a lot of travel. And it takes a certain person to be like, I'm probably not going to get back into the majors. Obviously, there's always a chance, but probably not. But I still want to keep playing, even if that means going south of the border and playing every single day for way less money than you were used to for your career, but just for the love of the game. And I do appreciate that. I appreciate the fundamentals of baseball, because who knows, maybe I'm feeling a little differently today if, more players took care about making sure they knew how to run bases and catch balls hit right to them.
I'm, again, trying very hard not to talk about the World Series.
You can talk about it. I told you.
No, Xavier, I can't, because, I do enjoy the pain, and I don't want to let myself get out of control.
James, you can celebrate. If you want give me a nice fuck the Yankees.
It's not about the celebration. It's not about the celebration. It's about enjoying the despair of your fellow fans.
If I was sadder, would that make you happy? Because I'm not that sad.
This is Xavier. We can't talk about this. This is just not a realm that you and I think, can interact in.
James has a room in their house that it's just the banners of when the Yankees were eliminated every year.
That's such a good bit.
2012, game 157. 2024, game 5 of the World Series.
2012, they did beat us in the playoffs.
I was trying to pick one. I was like, I knew they had a doldrums sometime after 09.
Yeah, I mean, they got waxed after beating us by Detroit, but they did done beat us.
The only AL Central team that we ever lose to. Somehow it's Detroit.
I'm happy for us to have Billy Hamilton in this spot right now. Obviously, I have much affection for Billy Hamilton. I would like to bring up at the end of this, I don't want this to be a politicking. This is the like purest moment of us to look at groups of individuals. By the way, only the second time ever that we have each had exactly 3 inductees, therefore equal pools of 6 to select from each of us. The other one being the previous season. We have reached really incredible balance over the last roughly half year. But I don't want this to be a politic. I don't want... You, in the moment, said that you believed that Billy Hamilton was a better guy, but would not vote for him.
Because of the category.
I don't... If you believed in that moment that he was better... Because we weren't talking about his defense. Yes, we've been corrected on the defense. That is a fair point that has been brought to our attention by fair listeners. That wasn't on your mind at the time. You were voting against him because of the availability of him to MLB. And that hasn't changed in the slightest. And so if he wasn't good enough then, it feels wrong for you to bring him up now because you've made some kind of promise. And I don't want this to be a thing where if
you don't want Billy Hamilton in the Hall, that's fine.
I want Billy Hamilton in the Hall for the right reasons.
I can give you Peyton Hillis if you don't want Billy Hamilton.
But now I just want the right guy for the right reasons is all. I just want to know you're doing that.
Rules on this podcast. We do whatever the hell we want.
Here's what's important. Yes, James, you make a good point that it was after the episode release that Canner brought up the good point that, hey, Billy Hamilton actually a good defender too. Doesn't necessarily fit the category. Why are you holding it against Xavier that he is presenting his case non-linearly? Because we've talked about on this podcast. Vlade Divac got an ovation from Sixers fans well before he gave us the pick spot. But things happen non-linearly sometimes.
Let's stick a pin in Billy Hamilton. Let's get our full half dozen, and then we can revisit again, because I just want to know that he's going in for the right reasons if he's going in. But Diaz, you're right. Let's do this non-linearly. Let's have you go next. Who do you think we're bringing in this time?
All right. Well, this is just along the theme of the promises that were made. Some people might call them bribes. I call them promises. And I say that promises are the grease that helps the wheels of democracy churn. And the grease that I want to get in this time is my first favorite basketball player, Pepe Sanchez.
He was on my short list, and I was like, look, if it comes to me to do, if it becomes my responsibility to do it, I will gladly take him. But it feels inappropriate to not let Diaz be the guy claiming Pepe Sanchez.
Well, it was to look back on that time of my life as a sports fan. It was just, I knew that other college teams existed, obviously, but I didn't even really know what the Big Five was. It was just Temple and the Sixers. And so it turns out that Temple, which was honestly at that point, pre the 01 finals run, I was probably more of a Temple basketball fan than a Sixers fan, just by virtue of Temple was always at least going to the Sweet 16, sometimes the Elite Eight. And Pepe Sanchez was the backbone of that. And then not only that, he then immediately goes pro and plays for the Sixers. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, now the Sixers are going to win all these games because now they have Pepe Sanchez. It's a nice reminder of the naivete of youth is Pepe Sanchez for me. But I think what really puts it over the top is well after his college career, his NBA career, when he's back in Argentina, and I forget the exact circumstances, but what was it, either injuries or it was COVID illnesses, and the team that he was the GM for, he was just like, fuck, I can give us 20 minutes tonight. And he just takes the court, and I think he had 8 assists in that game. Hadn't played competitively in 5 years.
Still dish it. Don't ask me to shoot, but I can dish it still.
Exactly. And I mean, honestly, he's a guy that I would have been fascinated to see come up in the modern game, because I think he had like a genius level IQ understanding of basketball and how to pass guys open and how to see the floor. I have to think he would be a better shooter from the outside if he came up in like modern basketball, because he was always a good free throw shooter. He was never like just chucking it, but it was like you know how Ben Simmons like says he doesn't take threes because he knows that he can get better shots. Like Pepe was actually that. Like Pepe was not afraid to shoot the three, but you know, what if it was there? But always knew that he could make a better play.
I feel like with all past players at this point, you can give them like a little bump in any shooting percentages just because of the emphasis that is put on that for everyone now. Like if they were translating this, if they'd grown up 20, 30 years later, everyone's just going to probably be a little bit better at shooting if they were that good at everything else for basketball.
Right. Like Larry Bird for his career shot 37% from three. If he came up today, he'd be shooting 45, you know, like it doesn't make him less of a shooter. But yeah, all that to say, I love Pepe Sanchez and he does belong in this hall because I made a promise to Xavier and because he actually deserves it.
I believe that Pepe Sanchez is going in for the right reasons. I have no doubt that he is first in your heart. And that leaves us with two decisions for me from Xavier's group. I'd gotten it down to three. Again, Pepe Sanchez was on there if it fell to me. I'm glad it didn't because that leaves me with the two J's, Juan Martín del Potro and Juninho. And I got to say, Xavier, you hung out in Brazil and Argentina a whole lot this season.
You know
really
what?
Just kept popping between those two.
You know, South America and hockey were the things that I felt made the best stories this season. So I don't know. Maybe I got to find an Argentinian who played hockey at some point.
I want to start by saying, like, I think each of these two have one of the best criterium in their like references and in their overall resume, which is they were incredibly good trivia answers that aren't like too specific. You have Juan Martín del Potro and you ask like, who's the one person that got one in the midst of that stretch of the other four? And it is Juan Martín del Potro. And then with Juninho, you have like, who is, you know, the, who has the most static ball goals of all time. And both of them having these like pretty basic trivia ones, but not being guys that are at the forefront of your mind and that like you would have to know that answer. Or people, you can't just go ahead and guess. But of course, this does not help balance out between the two of them. They each have it. So I think where I turn looking at the two, while we love a knuckleballer, with Juninho, and especially with the Lyon run, as you described it, where it's like no championships ever, absolutely nothing except for winning the title every single year, no championships ever again. I know he probably wasn't the best player on the team. I don't know enough about French soccer to say who was at the time. I'm sure you could tell me, but I know he wasn't the best player. That being said, that is a kind of like Tom Brady-like presence in a franchise. And it does, I think, push him a little bit into too good to guy category or territory for me. It's verging on it enough that I think when I look to Juan Martín del Potro and I see in particular, like, unlike Juninho, a career that is much more limited. I don't want to say that I love that his career was limited. And I know that Juninho also missed out on like a lot of international appearances due to injury. But Juan Martín del Potro, I think, has a little bit more unrealized potential, which does make me more sympathetic to him. And I do think it lends more of a dramatic arc to all of it. And so all of this is me deciding on the spot. I believe I'm going to use my spot for Juan Martín del Potro.
Double Argentinians, back to back. Take
double
that,
Argentina.
Also, the answer for who were the best players on Lyon. So for the first half of Juninho's time there was probably Michael Essien. And then for the second half, it was Karim Benzema.
Okay, Benzema, I know. There we go.
Yeah, young Benzema was on Lyon before he moved to Madrid. So,
well, Xavier, with both of the people on your side selected, do you want to take a next shot to fill up your roster of Reliti-Guy-tion contestants?
Yeah, I'll make this not a true snake draft. I'll skip Diaz.
No linearity whatsoever.
So the question here now is, I had two guys for Diaz. One, I think he would enjoy being put into the Hall more than anyone else. But one that, based off of James's criticism, I think probably deserves it more. because of that, I already got away with one that annoyed James. I will go with one that there can be absolutely no doubt that they fit the category and deserve to get in. And that's the Pillsbury throwboy, the hefty lefty himself, Jared Lorenzen. I said enough about Jared Lorenzen on the show last week, but I do love him. He was fantastic. He was the epitome of a big guy who just, happens to be really good at this at football, and it was just fun watching him play, both for Kentucky and for the Giants, because obviously at that point I was, still in middle school, living in New York. My dad, massive Giants fan, so watched every game with him. And like I said before, for guys that keep playing even after, the money's dried up, but they're just doing it for really the love of the game. Like, what can you say about Lorenzen being the commissioner of the Ultimate Indoor Football League, playing these games, for the Northern Kentucky River Monsters, Owensboro Rage, in front of, how many people? 100, couple hundred at most. But just because he liked to do it. And, how it really kind of killed him when he physically couldn't, and not metaphorically and literally, but just the absolute love of the game. He was the big guy. I mean, I love Jared Lorenzen. I don't have anything bad to say about him, and I think he deserves to be in the Hall, even if that means that I can't give you Ryan Howard, Diaz.
The hefty lefty instead of the big piece, I think, is totally fine. And I really just, I know I brought it up during the episode, but I can't emphasize enough. Look up that high school film, because I've never seen high school film like his ever. Xavier brought up the Derrick Henry. Imagine if Derrick Henry could also fucking sling it 75 yards. It's like nothing I've ever seen before.
And X, I would push back, but not in a way of disagreeing with you. I push back on saying he exclusively did out of love of the game. There was a need to do it, both, I think, yes, a passion-based need, but also he recognized, at least based on Diaz, you're telling, that this was what he needed to stay alive, if he could, very literally, as you alluded to. He needed this structure in his life to protect him from himself and his own, no judgment about the characteristics that he had, but he had clearly a personality that was going to lead him a certain way if he didn't have this. And so all just to say, not just the love, but I don't think that denigrates the case at all. I'm still fully in agreement that I think this is a worthy selection.
Love Jared Lorenzen. Definitely deserves it.
So, I mean, if we're really saying fuck the linearity, that would mean that you go here, James.
Okay. Let's do that. I think you're right. I feel like it's we've done this 11 times. And Jared Lorenzen was not on my short list, and I have a large short list for Diaz. So this is difficult. I think if Xavier's going to skew Ryan Howard, I mean, here's what I'll say. The only thing about Ryan Howard is I agree with what you said, Diaz, which is that he was one of the most feared hitters in baseball for too long. It is simply just I don't know, man. He's too good. We've talked many times about the fact that Ryan Howard's almost certainly a guy if we talk about him in, I don't know, fucking December 2022. But November 2024 feels like I think Ryan Howard's a little too good when I have 3 other very good options on my plate. And I am actually going to push one of them aside as I look at this, because the more I say it, the more it is just these 2. But shout outs to Walter Alston, just because it is cool that you talked about that. And then we immediately had Tasha's Yankees World Series. That was quite an invocation by you.
Are the one time that we managed not to reverse jinx something.
Yeah. Anyway, my list as it stands leaves us with Darius Washington Jr. and Marco Materazzi. Because I think Marco Materazzi has one of the easiest guy elevator pitches. Again, just a trivia question to sum up his existence, which is, do you remember that guy that got headbutted by Zinedine Zidane? It is such an iconic identity without an identity. It is such a title that is completely divorced from who you are, and yet is the thing that you are known for to the casual fan or even non-soccer fan who's just aware of that event having happened. But because first off, again, I don't want this to be any kind of backdoor deals. I'm trying to look at these 6 guys when I approach this and just truly say, like, who stands out to me the most. And while Marco Materazzi was absolutely incredible for his category, when I look back on it now, while I have a lot of respect for the enforcer role within a football team, within a soccer team, did Marco Materazzi, do we have a morality clause here in the hall? I know sometimes we obviously don't because we talk about villains, but like if there's a morality clause, it makes me pause about Marco Materazzi. And I can take the easy choice, which is Darius Washington Jr. Fish loves him. We don't know why Fish loves him. He is, if you for anyone that did not listen to our most recent Who Wants to Be a Guy-Millionaire with our friends Brooks and Jake, Darius Washington is the single most well-traveled guy in terms of countries that he has played in a professional league in that country. And of anyone we have ever discussed on this show with 14.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. That is tough to pass up. And that does kind of feel like the easy one, but I don't know, do we have to include complex people like Marco Materazzi? Do we have to have these tough conversations with the hall because getting headbutted by Zinedine Zidane is such a fucking great thing?
I mean, I think what makes it an especially prescient time to remember Darius Washington Jr. is, I mentioned this in our Discord, Darius Washington III has just committed to play Division I basketball.
This is true.
And so much of the way that I tried to tell that story and just really everything that's known about him is through the lens of fatherhood.
Yeah.
Big D to Darius Jr., getting down on the court to pick him up off the ground in his lowest moment because he knew that was the only voice he was going to listen to. And now we've come to the moment where Junior is now Big D. Is he medium D? I guess he's probably medium D, right?
He's medium D, yes.
And then now Lil D has committed to Kennesaw State. He is an Owl, be it not Temple, but he is still an Owl. And specifically within our corner of the universe, which does love all kinds of avian objects, but the one on which all 3 of us are unified is the Owls.
Hey, Kennesaw just beat Liberty to ruin their season. We can celebrate that. Which is awesome.
I think I'm sold. I think I'm sold on Darius Washington Jr. I think you are correct that because of the way, okay, this could have referred to either him or Walter Alston, the way that you talked about this, because once again, the Dodgers prevented a potential Yankees dynasty in this moment. And with Darius Washington Jr., you have this paternal link. But of those two, I think the paternal link tying back to your specific story before we knew this could be a possibility at this time. Darius Washington Jr. is my selection from the Diaz side.
So it shall be bolded. And so it falls to me for the final call of this. And for me, obviously you had some good ones, James. Billy Hamilton, I would have brought up as well. Peyton Hillis on the Madden cover, absolutely iconic. But I'm also going to kick it back to the first episode of this season for the one I want to bring up. Rubin Carter is obviously his story in and of itself is so crazy. And that he represents one of the greatest what-ifs in the history of a sport that has so many what-ifs. But, what if Rubin Carter got a fair shake? The entire history of the heavyweight division could look different. And instead, all we have is that song where there's a very alarming N-word in there, but I think it came
he drops. Bob Dylan drops a very white N-word.
It is very jarring, but different time. I don't think there was any ill intent behind it. But yeah, an all-time what if the hurricane rages, and hopefully we can help to put the hurricane to rest a little bit by granting him this honor and putting him up for induction into our hall.
My heart goes out to Greg Louganis, but Rubin Carter, I think, is also a very, very... I'm happy to see Rubin Carter get a win. The dude has needed a win in his life. I do now want to take a second, because I think it sounds like 5 of these, there's no issue whatsoever. I just want to talk about Billy Hamilton one last time. Xavier, I want you to forget that you ever said anything in your mind about promising, because I don't want to hold you to any promise that you believe you made to me about this. That doesn't matter. That is irrelevant to here. That's not what Reliti-Guy-tion is supposed to be about. I don't think it is supposed to be about the politics. It's supposed to be about the guys. I feel like fucking Ben from Parks and Rec talking about the Cones of Dunshire right now. Like, that's what this is about. If you look at that list and you believe that the 5, not including Rubin Carter, that of those 5, Billy Hamilton's the most deserving, I will be thrilled. I am happy to welcome Billy Hamilton, and I championed him. I believe he should have been earlier. Like, that's not a problem. I just want to know that that is why you have selected Billy Hamilton. This matters to me in my soul.
I'm not changing my answer.
Okay.
I'm locked in like the Jets fans who I just watched give the surrender cobra when the Jets went 3 and out and Aaron Rodgers got sacked at their own 2-yard line.
Hey, not a safety. Not a safety.
Not a safety. Just an overthrow of a wide open Devontae Adams, a Breece Hall drop that hit him right in the chest, and then a 8-yard sack. Meaning that the Texans had the ball at, I think, the 45.
The Jets are inevitable, just not in the way you want them to be.
They already showed a Jets fan with the paper bag over his head. That it was the first play of the Jets' first opening series. They had that. So,
well, the good news is we have 6 people that we can remove the cardboard bags that they have to wear down in the basement and adding out, because they can't know when we come down to select them. They can't know until it's time. They can't have that anticipation. But there is no longer any anticipation because, Diaz, it does sound like we've got a half dozen guys to welcome on up to the stage here.
Yes, the paper bags have been removed from the bus. They are no longer necessary. We want their faces to shine in the eternal glory of the Hall of Guy. They will join in an illustrious group. There are many among them. They are the few, the proud, the guys. And for this season, season 11, those guys that are coming in to join the Hall upon Reliti-Guy-tion are Rubin Carter, Darius Washington Jr., Pepe Sanchez, Billy Hamilton, Jared Lorenzen, and Juan Martín del Potro. Bienvenidos, welcome to the Hall of Guy.
We need an entire Argentinian wing at this point.
Just don't ask any of them what their grandfathers were doing in the 1930s.
Yeah. Yes, wasn't that golfer who did the stupid?
Oh, what a stupid I am!
Wasn't he also Argentinian?
He is, yeah. I can't believe what a stupid I am.
Okay, sure, yeah, we could build out the Argentinian wing. Should we put a Brazilian one there too, just to emphasize how empty it still is right now?
No, we put the Argentinian wing there, and the Argentinians will build it themselves to fuck with Brazil.
Well, hey, speaking of things that are being built, we have set up something new related to the show as we wind down here. Congratulations to all of those 6. I don't want to take away from that, but I do want to mention something to you, dear listener, which is that the 3 of us are trying to write more. We have been working on a project that I think we've alluded to several times that will ideally be out next spring. But in doing that, I just got the juices flowing. And we're all going to try and be putting some stuff out more frequently. So that is now the RTG Dispatch, which you can find links to on bit.ly/rememberthatguy. All one word, all lowercase. We got something up there about Lamar Jackson and the history of the New York teams taking everything that Baltimore holds dear. Diaz has something coming up soon, I understand, about Saving Private Ryan. Not actually about the movie, but somehow Saving Private Ryan.
The way that I've written it, it's so funny that that's what started it, because it's literally just going to be an analogy in like the last paragraph that I'm writing. But it was the foundation upon which all of it was built. I'm excited for people to read it.
Yeah. So, hey, check that out. Subscribe to that. Listen to the show. The show would not be possible, though, of course, without producer Craig, the coders behind him, our musical director, Don Ham, who makes that lovely theme music, or without you, dear listener. Thank you so much for listening. We do hope that you read as well. And that is everything I think I have for this week. Anything from you guys here on the way out?
It's funny that the Green Goblin is starting for the Jets, and I think the Jets just roughed the punter, meaning that they gave a free first down on a 4th and 21.
Jets, Jets.
Love it, baby.
They have become even more inevitable in the 3 minutes since I said that.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, if that is all we have, then, folks, it has been a pleasure to be one of your hosts, James.
I've been the very special guest, Xavier.
And I'm Diaz. And shout out to the official sponsor of Season 11, Gatorade. Gatorade, is it in you?
They are in there.
It's been skeeted, and so it shall be. The guys are coming in.
Also, Diaz, I gave Xavier the heads up. I am on doorbell duty for trick-or-treaters, so if I hear one, I will have to jet real quick just to hand out candy.
Ooh, Wemby showed up as No Face to the Spurs game today.
That's fucking great. What an excellent guy.
A Spirited Away tattoo. I do love that very much.
I appreciate it. It's like, yeah, no, I'm this big, man. Like, I'm not gonna draw attention to it? Hold on, there's the doorbell. I'll be right back.
Quick, James is gone. We could say terrible things about them.
Well, hold on. Let's take advantage of this time. What do you think is the top candy in James's bucket? I'm going to say Kit Kat.
James feels like a chocolate person. I'll say Reese's Cup.
Reese's is a good call. Reese's, I feel like I am the black sheep in that I do not enjoy Reese's Pieces. I like my chocolate, and I do like my peanut butter and jelly, but I don't like my chocolate with my peanut butter.
James, what's the biggest what's the biggest candy you have in there? What do you have the most of?
The most of we have so we got a filler bag of Reese's Cups to bundle out everything else. Tiny Reese's Cups is the filler. Tiny Reese's Cups is the filler. It's never you never want to lead with Tiny Reese's Cups. It's the foil ones specifically. It is foil Reese's Cups.
Okay.
I'm going to need you to put a big ding after what we just talked about. Leave this in the episode.